Right. Hi. Welcome back to another one of these Telegram consult videos. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I really apologize for that because I've been crazy busy, but again, that's no excuse, because it's just poor time management on my part. But nevertheless, here we go. We are looking at this question, my body, my business. How far do you agree? It's a question that I set myself and I don't know what I was high on when I said this. It's clearly one of the crazier questions that you would, encounter in the process of, your general paper. Now, the rule of thumb is that if you come across this question, just skip it, mate. Just don't do it. Go and deal with something easier, because this is not an easy question. That's what I can say. But certainly it's not impossible. And that's what we are going to look at today, how we are going to break this down. All right. So when when we are trying to break down a particular essay question, the main point, first of all, is to obviously identify your keywords. I trust I don't really need to explain that all that much. But you do have to break down the keywords by their dictionary meanings first, because when we are talking about different word choices or different word classes, so on and so forth, depending on the contexts in which they are being used, right, they can have different meanings. So that's why we want to make sure that we understand the dictionary meanings of the words first, and whatever other dictionary meanings that can be applied in the context of this question, we just go ahead and generate our arguments from there. So obviously this is just a quick question breakdown. I'm not going to go through the full points because that will take upwards of an hour. If you'd like, a consult on this question, just drop me a text anytime. Right, my number can be found in the Telegram group. It's under the name Chang, 94352009. Okay. So my body, right? I think it's self-explanatory over here, as you can see, right? That's why I didn't break it down further. But my business, obviously, the word business, if we put it like if you just take it at face value, it just means, like a for-profit entity or whatever. But when we put it in context, that's why I say the dictionary meaning is important, because then we can identify what the actual contextual meaning is. Over here, it means my own responsibility or one's own choice or prerogative. Okay. So from there, right, we have the three dictionary meanings. We apply it to the context of the question. In other words, what people do with their own bodies when we combine these three meanings together is that it is entirely their own responsibility and choice. Or rather, it is entirely their own choice and thereafter entirely their own responsibility. So from here, if we want to break down the further conceptual sort of issues here, right? If we are looking at it in terms of own responsibility, that means we must explore the impacts of whatever choices that people make. So of course, we can then further split it in terms of the individual, communal, or the societal lenses that gives you the different scales with which you can play, when you're trying to flesh out all your different points. And over here, when we apply the concept of the government, because ultimately the government's job is to take care of long and short-term problems in society, right? That in turn, already gives you certain clues in terms of the point that you can possibly generate here, So even if such things may fall to individual responsibility, will it necessarily mean that the impacts of all these things do not then thereafter have that sort of knock-on effect on governmental policies or social problems, so on and so forth, right? And of course, the individual and their surrounding family members and community as well. So conceptually, we are looking at things like health, impacts, and cultural manifestations, and that all comes from this right here. So when we are asking or when we are basing our assumptions, of the question itself, right? The question is essentially assuming that what people do with their own bodies is entirely their own choice and thereafter their own responsibility. So when we apply the question's key terms here, we can then ask ourselves, then should we interfere in these choices as a society, right? Be it from, once again, the individual, communal, or societal scale. And this right here, okay, this one, some of y'all, as y'all watch this, y'all might be wondering, wait, then why would I bring in the concept of culture? Because just as an abridged version, I obviously do not have time to go through the whole thing right here, but what I teach my students in my lessons is that when we explore any issues, that manifest in society, it usually stems from individual behaviors. I mean, that much is obvious. But what then determines individual behaviors? That would be individual identities. What determines identity? It's culture. So that's why I brought in culture here, right? What one does with one's body, the choice is down to individual identity, which is determined partly, of course, by culture. And when we break that down further, we get, a whole bunch of conceptual issues like, let's say the choice of having tattoos or piercings, right? Pregnancy and abortion, especially. That's a really, really hot topic right now, given what's going on in USA. Food choices, so what we consume, and the health impacts that might come afterwards, right? I mean, as you can see right here, I'm one of the negative, sort of like impacts of food choices. Clothing choices, right? And by clothing, I don't just mean fashion. I also mean cultural forms of clothing, or how much one, or rather, to rephrase myself, the perception that we have towards how much we clothe ourselves, or how we present ourselves in whatever different kinds of contexts. Or it can be related to things like vaccinations, and that's a nice link to like all the issues of anti-vax. Sexual habits. So I know in schools you all learn from sex ed that it's all about abstinence, but in reality, when we talk about the world as a whole, right? In Singapore, which is much more conservative, we don't usually touch on these issues, but promiscuity is something that might be considered much more common in, let's say, in more liberal contexts like Western societies. But what are the implications of that? So, we are talking about exploring things like the cultural impact, like let's say broken families, after maybe a case of cheating or infidelity, or we are talking about health issues, the spread of STIs and all that. Okay. And of course, things like euthanasia, assisted suicide, which is illegal in most countries in the world. But again, it boils down to a question of individual choice, So these are essentially the lenses through which you would need to view, this particular issue, right? And consequently, the kind of points that we can generate would be something related to, hey, if it's a question of cultural practices, let's say. Like for instance, your Polynesian cultures, right? Like often have all these body tattoos, and it's considered a very normal thing because it tells their life story. So if you go and watch like Moana, for instance, and you see Maui has all these like tattoos on his body, it tells his life story. And likewise, if you look at somebody like Rock the Dwayne Johnson, he has all those tats on his left shoulder, right? And you can go and check out some videos of him explaining all those tattoos. In such cases, should we interfere? Versus, let's say, things like food choices, because of all the possible health implications, right? And to do a little bit of interdisciplinary thing here, when we look at it from the view or from the lens of economics, we are talking about things essentially food choices with negative externalities. What then? Would that then justify government intervention? I mean, in econs, obviously it would. So does it apply here? Right? So we need to then ultimately understand all the difficulties of or the tensions, I guess, between individual choice and what the government's role is in society, what they should seek to do and what they should seek to try and achieve. And as a result, that's how you formulate your points from here. I'm not going to talk about the points, obviously, because it's way too long. But hey, I'll be posting this on the Telegram group chat anyway, so you can take your time and digest it. If you'd like a consult on this, please let me know. All right, I'll see you next. I'll see you guys next time. Okay, thanks for your attention.